Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Ka-Pow Comics Best of 2025 Countdown. And for issue 4, number 4, we're jumping to another horror book. And I find this interesting that they're right next to each other and how I've ranked them, because there's a few things which I have in common, which, just generally doing stuff that I like within the medium of comic books, but they're also very opposed to each other in how they tell their stories. We're going to talk about the stuff they've got in common first, and probably the biggest one is just how effectively the artwork and the story intertwine and help each other along in really basic but fundamentally great ways. We start with the idea that this is a more survival horror kind of comic book. It is vampire, don't get me wrong, but not vampire in I think the way most people would expect it. It's certainly not Anne Rice, Army of Darkness, Vlad's Dracul, but no, what I meant it was Bram Stoker. It's not that kind of vampire. It's not even really 30 Days of Night kind of vampire. If I was going to put it to some other form of media, I'm going to probably go for something hardly any of you have heard of, the tabletop RPG Nightlife. It is splatterpunk vampire horror, and it's done very, very effectively because the pacing and the way the story is told, how the characters interact with each other and the various factions interact with each other is helped along by some of the most brutal, violent artwork that also managed to be absolutely beautiful and stylized in its own way. Written by Mike Carey, who is known for doing, I'm going to say, probably slightly more subtle things than this, with art by Jonathan Waychak, who is fairly new on my radar, but absolutely deserves to be on that radar, and I'll be paying attention to his name for a while. He's got an almost Simon Bisley-esque kind of quality to it, but if anything, it's rougher, a little bit more open in the stylistic choices. It pushes into caricature for an awful lot of the characters, but in ways that make sense within the narrative of the world and the way the world has been presented. And all this tied in with the way the story is told is brilliant. But the artwork on its own, even when it's not moving the story along, is just superb. Every single individual character is beautiful and brilliant and messed up. There are characters where there's just odd little things about them which prove that this is a comic book where photorealism is not the point, and the more you see of it, the more you just fall into a world that this is the way of things. And then when we get to the extremes of the vampiric creatures, and not all of them are vampires, there's other stuff going on here. I mean, to say it's a vampire book, hardly any of the main characters are actually vampires or deal with vampires, but stay with it. The reveal is absolutely worth it. But these giant, distorted, distended creatures are horrifying and beautiful in their own way. There is so much care and attention put into how they're presented on the page that even when they are doing the most messed up, violent, disturbing, unsettling things to each other and other characters, you still find yourself drawn into it. Part of the way this is done is not just in the really over the top, if this was music, volume would be 10 kind of thing, but it is the colouring of it, because it is used sparingly but very effectively. Quite often, we see stuff just black and white and grayscale, or very faded, dull colours in the background, but there is also these amazing splashes of sometimes existential colour, where it feels like it's more an artistic choice rather than something which actually exists within the world of these characters. But again, because we're dealing with a world where stuff isn't normal, things are above and beyond what one could expect, it does help. It does lean into the storytelling. And it is also, at least as far as I can tell, hand done. It appears to be very little digital at all, and I'd love that for this, because some of the stuff is so OTT that you kind of expect somebody to be absolutely wanting to steal this for their own generative AI version of it, but you're never going to be able to recapture this kind of art. It is 100% a work of love and passion by somebody who is dedicated to spending the time to do it right. Now, onto the writing. I'd say Mike Carey is probably known for far more subtler forms of humour, but the thing above and beyond the horror of it that make this an absolutely amazing book is how well every single character exists within a very complex system. It's one of those big differences from Plague House, which is a exceptionally well done but straightforward until the final morality play kind of issues haunted house story. This is not straightforward in any way, shape, or form. Very early on, we realised that the fact that what we think is vampires is not vampires sets us in this headspace of I don't trust what I'm going to be seeing now. And that's the best way to go about it, because we have multiple factions all working against each other, individuals within working against other individuals within factions. There's backstabbing, civil wars, turncoating, there's all manner of stuff going on. And it makes me feel that even though I think this was sold as a miniseries and it might still be planned to like end within an issue or two, I think maybe 6 issues is the total that we have listed for it at the moment. There's so much in this world that I would not be surprised if it gets revisited. I genuinely love all the interplay, all the dynamic storytelling, which is absolutely character focused, but it just gives so much more of an open world feel to it. It doesn't feel like this is a story first where there's beginning, middle, and end. It feels like sometimes the characters are going beyond the control of Carey. It reminds me to a certain degree of when Frank Miller talks about his very first Sin City book and how it was supposed to be a lot shorter, but Marv just wouldn't die. You get a sense that from these characters, they're absolutely determined to stay alive, to get answers, to get to the next thing. They're not doing it with an end goal in mind other than one more day, one more thing. And that kind of storytelling is exactly what I want, and I absolutely love it. Throw into the fact that Bad Idea also has some really good stuff they do with post-credits, shall we say, kind of stuff. Just go and check it out. It's disturbing but amazing, beautiful but horrifying, and so complex but wonderfully realised. That's it for me for now, though. Until I see you all again, look after yourself, everyone. Stay safe. Bye!